Hey everyone, welcome. I'm Dennis Fisher, and I'm here with my colleague Silas Cutler from the Census Research Team. We got a pretty big, interesting story to talk about this week, Silas. In the BeaverTail slash InvisibleFerret malware slash fake interviews slash fake companies story. You've done a bunch of research on this. Um, I guess we'd call it a threat. I mean, that's the only label I can give to it, or
Yeah, threat seems fine. It's big though, which is the challenge. Like we're used to threats as like bite-sized bits essentially, but this is much more spanning.
yeah, it's sort of this overarching thing. And if people aren't completely familiar with what we're referencing, if you've read anything over the last, I don't know, I'd say year, 18 months, somewhere in that range, 2 years possibly, about some of the North Korean IT workers, some real, some fake, that have been applying for and in some cases getting jobs in Western technology companies, a lot in the US. We've seen some security companies actually come out and say, hey, we were caught by this, we were fooled by this. But there's a lot more to it. There's laptop farms, there's, front companies, there is malware, there's a whole sort of large spectrum of stuff under this Carnival of Threats, I think, is a name that maybe you gave it. Uh,
I think it started off actually as that was a like dev title I had for like a section in a talk and just left it because it kind of kept working.
it
But
works really well. Yeah. So I guess maybe we should just start out. Can you give us sort of, I know you've been following this for a while as I have. Give us a little bit of background on what we're talking about here and sort of where this came from.
yeah, so I'll give the actually kind of the hot take that I tried a lot to get into the slides, but is still like kind of one of the most underlying things to it, which is uh, North Korea is really good at cryptocurrency in general. Like they've spent years of the past decade doing a number of targeting of large crypto exchanges, um, but that crypto targeting isn't because they're good hackers. It's because they understand cryptocurrency, they understand modern development, and they have real solid skills. So now they're figuring out how to monetize it, and it's enabling them to have essentially their own citizens go out, work either gig jobs, sometimes more like full time jobs,
Hmm.
all building up their skill set, raising funds for the regime, um, and bringing back skills that they can teach to others.
Yeah. And this is not, I said, year, 18 months, but some of this goes back much farther. If you want to think about like the Swift heist, I can't recall exactly what year that was, but it was several years ago. I don't know, 2015 timeframe, 2017, somewhere in that
Yeah, the Bangladesh one was I
range.
think 2016. There was definitely
Okay.
something in 2017 and 2018. Like it's been an ongoing pattern with them.
Right. I mean, as you said, they sort of use cryptocurrency theft and mining and those sorts of things as a way to fund the regime. In a lot of cases, the defense program, because they don't have other legitimate ways to do that because of sanctions and things like that. And unlike some other state backed actors, they're not all that concerned with being stealthy in a lot of these things. They're just kind of like you said, we know where cryptocurrency is and we're going to go try and get it if we can.
Yeah, and I mean, I would absolutely love to know what their like click through rates are of in terms of like phishing and things like that.
Yeah.
Because I mean, with BeaverTail, like we saw this in use for well over a year, um, and through some fairly direct like human enabled spear phishing, where they've got somebody on LinkedIn messaging a developer saying, "Hey, work on a project with me." Um, Take a look at this code base, and hidden in the code base is something that's going to infect them locally.
Yeah, so let's talk about the malware itself. So we referenced BeaverTail and InvisibleFerret earlier. There's another one I believe called Otter Cookie, which is great. I mean, these names are just tremendous. I know you've participated in some threat actor naming stuff in the past. This is just delightful. Tell us a little bit about the malware itself and like how it's delivered and what the functionality is.
Yeah. So, and one of the interesting trends. So, Invisible Ferret is the like second stage, the full stage, and Beaver Tail is what does the actual delivery of it. But something
Hmm.
I'm seeing through a lot of these tools, and I'm wondering if it's going to be something as like a larger trend. um, but Beaver Tail, in its first run, has that initial first stage: build a system profile of the infected system, grab host name, domain, username, all the basics.
Yeah.
But they also do just sort of an initial, like, we're going to grab credentials from the browsers, check for cryptocurrency wallets, do an initial, like, let's pick up anything we might want later on, just in case. Um, so it's basically half like a first stage downloader, half an info stealer.
Okay.
Um, so I'm wondering how much we're going to see that in the future from this type of tooling for first stage, because if you can grab someone's credentials, that's gold. I mean,
Yeah.
everything after that's gravy and long term monitoring. But if you've got their credentials to log into their email, you can answer objectives right then and there.
Right. Is there anything like outstanding or really sort of unique about this malware family? Just from reading the descriptions, it doesn't seem like all that crazy to me.
No, it's definitely not one of the more sophisticated ones that I think we've looked at this year. It's pretty straightforward, which, and kind of going product side a little bit with it, is actually one of the reasons I kind of focused on it earlier this year initially pretty heavily, was because um, after the malware starts up, sends the initial batch of data off, but then it does two additional web requests. One where it pulls down like a full Python environment, and then one that actually deploys InvisibleFerret. But uh, that first stage where it pulls down the Python environment data was kind of a really good opportunity for us to start testing out doing some more malware focused hunting with Census's platform and scanners directly. Um, so it's been a fun use case test for that. And it also is an easy case as well as we work across engineering and different teams to help start bring them up to speed and get them exposed to doing some of this type of research.
Yeah, I mean, so the threat hunting part of it is something that must be kind of fun for you. I know this is something that you do like literally in your spare time because yeah, you're you. But you know, because there's so many like different little offshoots and tendrils of this whole um thread or scheme or whatever we want to call it, how much of a challenge is it to actually like sort of pick something and be like, okay, this is the alleyway I'm going to go down, you know?
It is such a tough thing because I'll start going down something. It's even why like the cryptocurrency, and even at the start of the presentation that I think we're posting on Monday,
Mhm.
uh, I started going down through the history of the of sort of large financially motivated North Korean cyber intrusions. And I remember as I was working in like kind of building out that initial research, I kept going down individual, like diving back into some of the cases, because there's a lot of cases where there was a sort of like, everyone agreed that it seemed like North Korea, but there wasn't that sort of later technical documentation on it. So going out and then kind of going back in and saying, oh, okay, we can actually now attribute this. But it being also just such a small part for some of these cases, but there's so many of them to go through.
And also, I know you go through this in the talk you just referenced that we're going to put up on Monday. Everybody sort of refers to North Korean threat actors under the umbrella of Lazarus Group, sort of like this overarching broad thing of like, you know, their entire attack infrastructure is Lazarus Group. You
Yes.
did a good job of sort of like separating and delineating some of those other ones, which I know is difficult from like several thousand miles away, and they're not the, you know, easiest country to sort of get a handle on. But how much of a challenge is that in terms of like figuring out like who's actually who in these groups?
It's very difficult. And I'll say that at least for me, where I don't speak Korean, which is a distinctive limiter of ability. But it's also one of these types of, like, North Korea itself. So when the U.S. sanctioned North Korea in 2012 for some of the IT worker activity, uh, they specifically attributed to like the 313th
Yeah.
Workers' Party group, and as a result, North Korea just renamed that entire division. So like that type of pattern of activity, it sounds like it's fairly common, but it's definitely made easier by a lot of other reporting that's been out there. So I know there was a chart from Mandiant that I referenced that's just always a really good one because it lays things really cleanly down. But it also is able to do that because it kind of implies a slight Western bias, similar to like how we look at it. So like RGB, it's similar to like NSA. But North Korea's politics are complicated because you also have who reports to who can task who,
Yeah.
kind of baked into those org charts as well.
Yeah, it's really difficult from a Western point of view to get a handle on that stuff. And the renaming stuff always reminds me of like, you know, a shady home contractor or plumber that like gets caught doing something, goes declares bankruptcy and just comes back out and is like, now I'm ABC contractors instead of, Dave's contractors, just
Exactly.
doing the same thing, new name.
Yep.
Which it's obviously a challenge for threat intel analysts to sort of keep your arms around it as they keep like shifting and reforming and all that.
Yeah, but it's also one of those really fun opportunities to kind of start looking and using some sort of like non-traditional data and data sources. Because a lot of times, like used to working with domains and IP addresses, but going into things like company registrations, that's a whole new area, and it's really a great way to sort of upskill as well when doing this research.
Right. Yeah. So there was we should mention there was a big research report that came out this week from Silent Push, another security vendor that extremely detailed on all of this stuff. In addition to the research you've done, I would encourage people to go read that as well. And they revealed through their research that they found three separate what they called front companies that one of these groups was using as part of the scheme, which is kind of a new, I mean, we see cybercrime groups and APTs use front companies all the time, but this is the first time I can remember front companies being associated with this particular threat. Maybe I'm mistaken about that, but it was interesting in how thorough they were in being able to pull out the details on these three companies.
Yeah, so it might have been the FBI, it might have been Palo Alto that I know is might have like like it talked to that there is the existence of the companies that like as part of it. But seeing it come from Silent Push also is really fantastic in this because they showed their work well.
Yeah.
Which and I think in previous cases it might have just been we know that this company was tied to it. So this is really nice to see, and also it's insightful to learn like how to do that type of hunting as well.
Yeah. It looked like, just reading through it, it looked like weeks, if not months, of very thorough, you know, heads down research on their part.
Oh yeah, it's great stuff, and I mean this is one of the really cool things right now with this threat, the IT worker threat in general is there is so much ground to cover between just what's actually happening at the technical level with some of the distinctive targeting of targeting of developers, researchers. Then there's also the supply chain attacks that are happening through PyPy and NPM,
Mm-hmm.
uh, and this isn't even leaving the technical side. So uh, yeah,
One of the other interesting pieces of this, and you kind of mentioned it earlier, is it's not all just one thing. There are some legitimate workers that are being hired. Maybe they aren't who they say they are, or whatever it is. They're getting jobs and sending money home to the regime. Sometimes it's remote work, sometimes they're here. It depends. Other times there are these fake personas trying to get into a company for intellectual property theft, corporate espionage, trade secrets, that kind of stuff. So there's this whole sort of mix of motives and different types of personas working in this whole thing.
yeah. I mean, I think we're going to see it spread beyond just North Korea. I think I saw like an Instagram the other day of somebody using like had taped their phone to their laptop and was doing a coding interview and just letting the AI answer the questions and read off the responses. And that's likely not far off from what they're doing in some cases, though in some cases I think they're much more technically competent um, than I probably was at like 19 applying for an internship.
Sure.
So uh, yeah,
Yeah, well, it definitely seems like it's something, like you said, this is not near the end of it. It seems like a relatively, low cost, low risk, and high reward type of scheme that they're running that, could run for quite a while because they're not worried about US sanctions. Like that
yeah.
doesn't matter to them. You
It,
know,
it also has so many secondary benefits like for other things because like having the process where you are stealing US identities using those then when applying for a full-time job,
mhm,
having that pipeline of stolen identities supports different other mission sets that they might have.
sure.
um, it, the use of if we need laptops and equipment to run at in the US and we want to just have a pile of laptops that we're paying somebody in Atlanta to host, it's another work stream that they're practicing and keeping fresh.
Yeah,
So
it's crazy. It is, like you said, a carnival of threats.
yep.
That name's going to stick. I'm going to keep using it. All right, Silas, thanks so much for your time, man. And everybody, keep an eye out for the next video that we will have up on Monday, which is a kind of I guess it's a webinar, kind of a walkthrough of this whole threat group in detail that Silas did for us. So
Yep.
thanks a
Well,
lot, man.
yeah, happy to come on. Thanks.